You know that some of you were supposed to be in class, and that some of you were actually supposed to be maybe cooking, doing your own house chores and so forth. Thank you very much, colleagues, for joining us for this session. Apologies for the background noise if you had one. So, colleagues, you're joining us today for a marketing masterclass where we'll be looking at the customer psychology in terms of what are the drivers that are driving the buying decisions in 2025. So I am joined with me by my fellow esteemed panelist members. With us, we have Amkelan Jennifer Salami, who is the Senior Behavioral Economist at NetBank. We also have Nomusa Kumado, who is the Chief Customer Officer in terms of the Africa and the Middle Class and the Middle East region, apologies, from the Torvest Retail Services. We also have Zandileng Tembumieni, who is a global head in terms of branding and marketing from the Solu Growth Pty Ltd. So, colleagues, you might be asking yourself in terms of what is it that we'll be engaging in today. So the purpose of the masterclass, as you know it, we normally at Regenesis, after we've had all our classes engagements, we normally try to then bridge the theory that we have learned in class through the facilitators with what actually happens in terms of the industry, right? We try to then create that gap in terms of that bridge. So today, we'll be then exposed to some of the key trends in terms of key shift of customer psychology in today's age. Whether it will be driven by digital technology that we're seeing, or by social factors, or by environmental trends that we then see. We'll also be exploring issues related to sustainability as well as personalization in terms of buying decisions. Those are some of the things that we'll then be exploring. I have my panelist members here who will then be assisting me in terms of some of the insights and experiences that they have that they will be sharing with us. So, colleagues, with that being said, thank you very much for joining us. And I would also love to thank our panelist members for joining us today for the session. Is there anything that I'm missing, panelist members, in terms of the introduction?
No, nothing from our side. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, colleagues. So, colleagues, I'll start probably with this statement. Or just a comment. Thank you very much. I'll start probably with this comment or statement in terms of in 2025, the buying decisions are shaping in terms of, with the mixed factors such as technology advancements, such as your social cultural shift, also individual psychology factors that are there. While we still have the traditional principles in terms of customer behavior, such as your motivation, your perception, as well as attitude, which still remain relevant in today's age. But today, customers have increasingly been influenced by your personal values in terms of personalizations, your AI-driven experiences, and also social validation. So, colleagues, what will then happen is I will be taking you through different segments in terms of our discussions, where we'll be looking in terms of understanding the modern mindset of the customers. We'll also be getting some behavioral insights in terms of, the practicality of customers of today. We'll also lastly then be looking at in terms of ethics and trust, while building that ethics and trust in terms of influencing customer decisions when they are buying or whenever they are being exposed to different goods. And then I will open up to the floor, be able to then ask their questions. I will be reading their questions through the chat. And that will be how the structure of our session then for today. So panelist members, just to take you through our first segment, we'll then be first looking at understanding the modern customer mindset of today. My first question to you, and I'm just putting it out to the floor, not specifically to a specific person, but anybody who feels very much confident in terms of sharing their insights, in terms of the question that I will then be putting on the floor. So my question that I have is, what are the top factors that are driving customer trust and brand loyalty in this day and age in 2025?
So I'll go first. And maybe
Thank you for making guys.
no problem. And I also maybe just clarify the industry that I come from so that it's better for the audience to contextualize what I'm referring to. So I come from the retail travel industry. So from a retail point of view, we are in the airport stores, in airport ground stores. And we're also on board from an in-flight point of view from a retail food and beverage and duty-free space. So from the duty-free space, I mean, there we're talking about, goods and services that are exempt from certain local taxes or national taxes and duties. And then in-flight retail, from a food and beverage point of view, you would find us, let's say, on board your Fly Safair. We would be in charge of, that trolley that is going down the aisle there, and your snacks and beverages that you get there. So the important drivers, to get back to your question, from when I think about the boutique and duty-free space, it's an industry that has thrived off of the impulse of the passenger, and that element of being, time constrained, or you've got a bit of capacity because you've arrived at the airport and you get earlier for your flight and you're killing a bit of time and you want some affordable purchases. So it's really primarily driven by that and that time factor. What we're also finding, and I think a lot of stores have mastered that over the years, is the type of music that is playing, the lighting, all of those different elements kind of impact the mood and create that mood for a passenger to be driven to buying. And of course, let's not discount the promotions that are obviously there to maximize on your different purchases and the value add from a travel retail point of view. But what I do want to call out, and I think in one of the things that you asked is around loyalty. Your salesperson and your salespeople play a very important role in enhancing the experience that customers may particularly have. And if you are in an onboard environment, the cabin crew are absolutely integral in creating that lasting loyalty and that brand identity that people go after from an SAA or whether you're flying Safair. They play such a pivotal role in creating that loyalty and that continued brand awareness and elevating any brand. So I think that would be my feedback in terms of that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nonsa. Is there any other panelist member who would want to share? Lani?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll share from my side, right? So coming from the banking sector, my focus is actually on, or my role sits at the intersection of looking after that consumer psychology, the economics, the data, and the marketing, where we try to use behavioral science as a way to actually understand the decision-making of the client or of the consumer in this case. And one of the things that we have seen from our side is that, clients are always bombarded with a lot of stimuli. So there's a lot of cognitive overload, daily stimuli, whether in the sense of ads, whether it be in alerts or push notifications or some of the financial decisions that they have to make. And then this results in them having a lot of decision fatigue. So one of the top drivers that we have seen from our side is actually that attention has become currency, right? So it gets to a point whereby people do not have time and they have limited attention, and attention has become a very scarce and valuable resource. So therefore, one of the things that you need to do is actually be able to capture their attention, and then you will be able to sell or market any financial or services products.
Thank you very much, Ms. Samkelan. Ms. Sandil, I think we lost you for a moment, but I think...
Sorry about that.
Do you also want to share this?
Yeah, sure, yes, absolutely. So I guess for me, I'm probably going to speak from not only the industry that I'm in now, but also the industries that I come from, right? So at the moment, I'm in the business process optimization space, and recently also been in the retail space as well as the property space, and I think the things that I can speak to probably go across all of those industries, right? And my colleagues here have probably also experienced some of those things. And a really big thing that has started happening in the last few years is consumers wanting radical transformation. and radical transparency, right? Which essentially means they want to know, where are you sourcing from? Are you sourcing locally? What are you, when you're putting forward a product, what are the things that you're using, right? And it's specifically with Gen Zs and millennials actually who are pushing this activism through using their money, right? And they put their money where their mouth is, honestly. And if they feel like, you're not giving back or you're not doing anything for the world around us, they're not going to buy from you. It's as simple as that, right? Which then, I guess, leads into that purpose-led business. So a lot of brands have to be purpose-led at the moment. You have to kind of show your consumers that you're aligned to their values, right? Which is hard because people's values are different, but that's where the nuance happens in knowing who it is that you're essentially targeting. And yeah, I think all of that also speaks to that personalization. People don't want the noise anymore. They want you to speak to them at the time that they want to be spoken to, about what they want to be spoken to about. So there's a lot that we're doing to understand that, in certain segments, you send out emails, for example, at 10, because you know that consumer is going to read it at that point. So it's actually really interesting at the moment because you have to be thinking about all of these things to be able to speak to people at the right time about the right thing.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sandile, on that. And thank you, my esteemed panelist members, for sharing your perspective. I think you've truly covered, great insights in relation to some of the, factors that are driving that, brand trust and loyalty, in the day and age that we're living in. We've covered issues related to having that transparency within the entire value chain, where you're sourcing your products from, and you've covered issues related to personalization, you've covered issues related to those particular product, speak to them, currencies and so forth. Thank you very much, my esteemed panelist members. I have a second question that I would like them to put it to the floor, then, in terms of how do social as well as environmental values influence the purchases and the purchase decisions of today. Anybody would want to then take on that question?
I think I'll go. Just building on what Zandile said, we basically need to make sure that as you're personalizing, you are actually tailoring whatever content, as well as she spoke also to timing, right? So whatever nudges that you are sending or whatever communication that you are sending, it needs to be personalized to those individuals. And from a social values perspective as well, consumers really aligned to brands that reflect their identity, as she's already stated. And within the banking sector, transparency and ethical ways of doing business are quite important. And there's also issues in terms of whether customers or clients are being treated equally or not. So we are, and luckily within the financial services industry, we are highly regulated. So treating customers fairly as well comes up a lot.
I think just to touch on, as well as Ngelani and what Zandile said, I think if I look at my industry particularly, coming from an industry that was hit hard by the black swan events, such as COVID, we saw a surge of, people going on holidays again, which obviously spiked up from a retail point of view, and the prices were good and everyone was shopping and it was great. But then things started to normalize. And again, that is given, underpinned by the fact that the purchasing power of a lot of people had been compromised. Technology had a big impact from a traveler point of view, where, the fourth industrial revolution is happening right now as we speak. Continents have been brought together in the flesh. We're having this Zoom call right now. We don't have to be seated in one room together. We're able to connect millions of people from across continents together. That has really adversely impacted, especially from a ground stores point of view, and the buying power, because a lot of industries collapsed during that time. But we are seeing, obviously as traveling becomes a thing again, but even the types of traveling has changed. It's now more leisure travel versus the influx of business traveler that was there. It is people trying to create new connections, and then it talks and links very well to what Uzandile was saying is from a sustainability point of view, where people want to know where you're sourcing. I come from the travel and tourism industry in the sense that if I'm traveling to Nairobi and I want to experience Kenya Airways, what do I leave with? What's that piece of Kenya that I leave with? And that really is what has influenced some of the buying decisions that people are making. The days of big brands, you can get those anywhere, but people want that authenticity of what they're consuming, where they're consuming it from, and how are they plowing back to that localized economy. And that we see it everywhere. And we infuse that into some of the partnerships that we've got so that we're able to give airlines that localized provenance that the customers are always looking for when they're traveling to the beautiful parts of our continent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharing. Yes, Sandile.
Hi. Yeah, Luyanda, just to jump on that last part that Nomusa touched on, which is that social alliance, right? Which has become such a pivotal thing for marketers, right? I'll give an example. So the business process optimization company that I work for, we currently in America, Egypt, Europe, the UK, as well as Australia, and South Africa, of course. And as much as our products and services are the same across the world, it has become so important for us to not only understand the social parts of what's happening in the countries that we operate in, but also the cultural parts, right? And I guess that speaks to socializing and localizing all of your strategies. Whereas, I've been in the industry for about 15 plus years. And 15 years ago, that's not something that was important to us, right? It was about, we've got some kind of product, it's about utilization, we're sending it out, people are going to use it, that's it. But now, if you think about things like personalization and socialization at the same time, it's become more and more important to understand who you're personalizing to. So that cultural part plays a very, very big role in whether you're successful, right, as a marketer, in speaking to people the way that they want to be spoken to.
Thank you very much, Zandile. I think, going back to what Nomusa has also touched, the issue of technology in terms of also a driver or an influencer in how we purchase, in today's day and age. We've mentioned issues related to, we can meet up today in teams, which means that there's a global reach now. You've mentioned something in relation to that there's a global reach now with the new technologies that are coming through. You're no longer now niched, or segregated within this particular, environment that you are then exposed to. Technologies assisting us in terms of that, and exposure. Thank you very much, and Nomusa, for sharing that. I think Kelani has then shared in terms of, issues related to treatment, within the banking space, as it's highly regulated. There is that issue of, how do you treat your customers? Because now it's visible to everybody. I think then the technology, what Nomusa was also touching on, is that banking app gives you that experience as well, which then can influence yourself in terms of whether am I purchasing now, in terms of now going to Pepe, or do I choose ABSA, or do I choose Capitec? Thank you very much for sharing that. I think Zandile also extended now the conversation to, the cultural elements of it. Does it speak to us culturally if we are culturally mostly influenced as people? Thank you very much, colleagues, for sharing that. I think I will touch last more on this on this discussion or on this segment. I want to touch in terms of some of the recommendations or advices that you give to marketers. What are some of the advices or recommendations that you give to marketers who are trying to be able to stay tuned, to the shifting mindsets in terms of how customers now are perceiving things? I'll put it then to the floor. Anybody wants to start?
I think I'll go first. I think technology plays a very pivotal role. We are constantly interacting with data continuously. I mean, we all know these days, if you say, I don't know, pram, I think I've given it away that I'm a mom. So if you say the word pram enough times on your cell phone, it's only a matter of time before prams start instantaneously becoming part of your feeds in whatever social media context that you are looking into or interacting with. So definitely data and AI is your friend in this day and age. If you don't get ahead of it, you definitely are lagging behind in terms of what everyone else is utilizing. However, in saying that as well, I think I do and still will always hold the sense that whilst we are living in a data-driven space and time, human interactions and getting that human feedback, because there are still blind spots to data. So please do not discourage or don't discount the human voice, the focus groups, the customer feedback, the passenger feedback, and all of those different feedbacks from an end to end, whether you're B2C or B2B type of business. That interaction and understanding who your customer is, and in instances understanding who your customer's customer is absolutely pivotal. And then combine that with the data to try and then understand your segment that you're dealing with. A lot of before you even go out and developing a product, understanding who your segment is, understanding the market that you're trying to reach, and tailoring your business to that, because that really is fundamentally what underpins all of your strategies, underpins how the business is going to work operationally, what your pricing strategies are. So all of those things are at the beginning. Marketing is at the root of it. So definitely, I think that would be my advice in terms of that.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Any perspective? Oh, I don't know.
Okay. So from my side, just to add a little bit, sorry, Zandile, I would just, like as a marketer, I would say adopt a test and learn mindset, right? Actually be able to use and leverage data and AI to actually test out your strategies, right? Well, there's a lot of A/B testing tools right now that you will be able to utilize in order to refine and actually see how does your strategy work in field, and be able to be nimble enough to actually change going forward. So we like to actually adopt a test and learn mindset, whereby it's not about win it all or yes or no, but it's around actually optimization and actually getting better at making sure that you're delivering value to your clients or other customers in your segment.
Thank you. There's something.
So I was going to say, I think my colleagues can agree that, when we started out in marketing, it was very important to create personas and demographics, and your marketing kind of sat in that box, right? And no matter what you did, you had to speak to these clients in that specific way, And it's shifted so much because those personas, even in those, there's so many nuanced things that's happening in those groups, right? So it's become more and more important for marketers to invest in behavioral, like data insights, right? And make sure that what you're doing is having a two-way conversation with your consumer. So you're not the one that's continuously telling them what should be happening. And that's where I think, the proof is in the pudding. If you look at things like TikTok, you'll see how user-generated content is increasing so much because whereas, when I first started in marketing, I remember number one rule, don't let the consumers speak to your clients. Don't do this, don't do that. They might get it wrong. They don't know our brand tone. They don't know our brand messaging. But now, if you're a brand and somebody is going on to, TikTok and using some kind of trend to talk about you, that is gold. So it's all about having that co-creation with marketing teams as well as with the consumer that you're trying to get to.
Thank you very much, my panel members. So I think maybe just to wrap that up, the gold mine is in the data. I think you've touched on issues related to AI and algorithm, in terms of what you search, it just booms, it becomes a click. It's always there, it's always in your face, it's always coming. I think the most you have touched in terms of you still need that human-centric approach as well. Well, I used to call it a there's a term that I used to have in terms of the two sides, which is it's more like a bio something approach where there are two sides of it. You still have that element side of things where it's AI driven, technology driven, but you still have that human element that still drives in terms of the perceptions, in terms of the consumption, in terms of also listening to what the consumers are actually looking for. Speak to them, be human. Don't these days we are being asked by technology if we are humans. If you log in, but it's one of those things. Thank you very much. I think Kiran, you've touched issues fundamentally related to test and learning. Use the data, use AI in terms of testing. The feasibility of what you're trying to put out there. Through these tools in terms of AI. In terms of testing and so forth. And Zandile, you've touched very well in terms of how you used to use persona in terms of profiling a customer. This is the persona, and then you engage them based on the persona that they have resemblance. And the use of now the generative content that comes through, how you can use now social media like your TikTok to spark something and become a gold mine where you can be able to derive from. Thank you very much, colleagues. I think that's how we then wrap up our first discussion, our first segment. We'll then now move to the second discussion, where now we'll be talking about your neuromarketing as well as the behavioral insights. And here I will be touching about issues related to how you use neuroscience in terms of campaigns with the marketers, how then they use it. I think my first question that I want to pose to you, or want to put it to the floor, is how can brands apply this neuromarketing ethically to shape buying choices of people? Anyone?
Okay, I'll go for this one because you can definitely see this is maybe one of my favorite segments coming from the space of behavioral sciences. I think in order to be able to use the behavioral insights ethically, number one, we need to understand that within the behavioral sciences space, you do not take away the choice of the client, right? Autonomy is king. So as you're creating your nudges, even though you might be defaulting individuals into a specific, maybe let's say you're defaulting them into like to opt-in marketing, you still need to give them the choice to be able to opt out. And that is just a core principle. In terms of neuroscience space, one of the things that you can do is that in your marketing creatives, before it goes out, as you're going through the process of conducting your research and testing your marketing ads, before those things go out, actually look for tools like eye tracking. I think there's a lot of tools right now that embed eye tracking as part of the services, whereby you can actually check and see what are the areas of interest, what are people actually looking at, what is grabbing attention from your clients or audience in terms of those marketing ads or any other communication that you're building from that side. So really, when we try to apply, neuroscience and behavioral economics, there are a lot of principles that we know. We know that individuals are present biased, meaning that the needs of today matter more than the needs of tomorrow, right? So there's just a lot of that. So being able to apply those principles, but you need to understand that, number one, autonomy is still king. You need to give the clients to have autonomy. And on top of that, you'll be very surprised to actually see that context matters, especially in the space of behavioral economics. So you might find that maybe for a specific segment, maybe let's say for clients in Gauteng, they are completely different to clients in Cape Town. So just you still need to do your research, then apply a behavioral lens to be able to understand what are the behavioral drivers within that space. And when you design your interventions, I've already said, having a test and learn mindset. When you design your interventions, making sure that you're doing A/B testing or RCTs, which is your randomized control trials, to actually understand to see whether these nudges are working or not. Yeah. And I'll hand over to the rest of the panel members.
Thank you very much, Amkilani, for that engagement. Anybody else with different perspective, similar perspective? Yes, Nomsa.
Suppose I'll go next. I think, when I think about my industry, it's a lot social media and
I'll jump in then.
Oh.
No, you're still on. I was just coughing, sorry.
Okay, all right, no problem. So I think a lot of, from a retail point of view, I think a lot is, hinged on, emotional responses and how, and a lot of people, like I said, from an impulse buying point of view, it really is about what emotions are evoked by certain products and some of that brand loyalty and how that product, kind of reminds them at home. It touches a lot in terms of, our unconscious biases and how we grew up and all these things that influenced what I saw my mother using. And it's really about tapping into, your different types of market segments and understanding who your demographic of consumer is at the time. And then, again, it's that attention to engagement and how you keep them engaged throughout your whole, life cycle of them being a loyal brand holder, is staying top of mind. And with today, with regards to social media, it's how you keep them connected into your network and your ecosystem that really influences and has that long staying, thought in terms of decision making when they're deciding on particular products. What we also are finding that a lot of businesses have done well is having seamless and interlinked rewards systems. Everyone wants that feeling of getting something back. Everyone wants that feeling of being rewarded for being loyal over a certain period of time. And we find that building in those loyalty programs that are redeemable at certain phases of the journey. I mean, I think one of the things that we pride ourselves in is that we allow customers and passengers to start their journey on the flight versus just when they get into their destination. So whether you have forgotten your charger, you need to be able to find it on board. Whether you've forgotten a fragrance or your lipstick, you need to be able to find that. And if you're celebrating a honeymoon or a new engagement, that celebration should start from the aircraft before you get to where you're going. And so those are some of the things, especially coming from a travel retail point of view, that where we try and create those memories. And for us, it really is tapping into that neuroscience kind of thing and impacting the lasting decisions that passengers and customers are attracted to a certain brand or airline. And really that is what we kind of look out for when we're building our marketing strategies.
Thank you very much, Nomsa. And also thank you very much, Kelan. I think we might have lost Zandile for now. Maybe she will also just rejoin us. I think maybe let me just recap on some of the great points and insights that you have shared. I think Kelani has indicated in terms of, autonomy being key. You should have that option for people to be able to opt out whenever they want to, live with that choice, for them to leave, to say, look, I'm okay now. They can be able to opt out, And I think you've also shared something also in relation to that eye-checking tools. I think it's something that we can also just be heads up on as my fellow, students, academics, and also other participants that can also be checking out. I think I saw a chat in terms of some of those tools, you were asking, and you're already really answering to some of those questions, And thank you very, very much in terms of that. And you also indicated in terms of the needs of today, they matter far much more than the needs of tomorrow. You focus on the context in terms of the matter of what is here right now. I think then Nomusa touched in terms of, really about understanding the demographics and the background of the people, how they are, and she also touched in terms of keeping your customers engaged throughout the entire life cycle, in terms of the product or in terms of the marketing and keeping them within that ecosystem. Thank you very much, colleagues, for sharing on that. I think, Ms. Zandile, we've lost you a bit. I don't know if you mind this one to pass you or you would rather want to share a perspective. Since we might have lost you, I'm not sure if you managed to get the question that was being placed on the floor. Yeah, I think we might have lost Ms. Zandile once again. I think maybe then let's move on to the next question that I just wanted them to ask in terms of what are some of the common mistakes that marketers should avoid when trying to apply in terms of these behavioral insights? What are some of the things that they should not do? What are the, some of the things that are, that don't touch this? What are those common mistakes that marketers are constantly doing and should be avoiding in terms of applying these behavioral insights? Anybody on the floor who want to take this question?
Okay, so I think from
I think I'll jump in there.
Okay.
Sorry. Since we didn't have you, you can go in and then we'll have Kilani then.
All right, sure. So I think the thing is, I mean, Amos spoke about nudges earlier on, right? We're saying what we should be doing. But I think the thing that the mistake that people make is that they take one set of nudges and they run with them as their strategy for the rest of the time, rather than understanding that these nudges can change at any given time, right? And adapting your strategy to what these nudges are saying is very important as a marketer, right? Specifically, when you think about, things like cancel culture, it's such a big thing because you could be saying something and then all of a sudden in the industry or in the world, there's something that's being said about this thing. You have to be able to adapt as a marketer, right? To be able to speak to people. And understand that even though data is king, it changes. And it changes constantly. So you have to constantly be listening to what's going on. And that's why it's so important for people to use things like social listening tools. Every single day as a brand, somebody should be sitting online and looking at what are people thinking about these specific topics, these specific things that you are putting out there.
Thank you very much, Zandile. Angilani?
Thank you so much. Just to build on what Zandile was saying, sometimes we think one nudge and we think that is it and we run with it forever. But as we've said, within behavioral sciences, context matters a lot. So hence you need to be able to be using those social media listening tools to actually understand what's going on in the context. What is the social context that is happening around the topic that you're trying to put out? So really definitely, and I think one of the things that you do not do, please do not cross the ethical lines. I know that might be, obvious, but for some people, I mean, there's things called using dark patterns. So really, like for example, you cannot default individuals to maybe, let's say, make sure that you're getting sales at the expense of the well-being of the client, So those are some of the things that I would say do not cross the ethical lines. And that is it from my side.
Thank you very much, Kilani, for that. Okay, colleagues. Nomusa, do you also want to share your perspective?
Yeah, I think for me, it would be just two things. And I think I kind of touched on it, throughout the things that I've been talking about. But I think the mistake a lot is really not understanding your audience and your target audience. Fundamentally, I think thorough research is always important to understand what is the need that I'm actually solving for. And I think a lot of the times when we're not listening to the current in the information and the feedback that we're being given, we tend then to assume, and you find that you're solving for something that your customer is not really looking for. So it really, and that wastes a lot of resources, time, energy, and effort. So that's that, and understanding your customers and their pain points. And then the other thing, I think the ladies actually have really touched on it quite well. I think Uzandile touched on it when she spoke about the cancel culture, and that really talks to that inconsistencies of branding and messaging. When the brand says one thing, but then and they're not necessarily living the values of the brand, and changes the narrative in different channels or different segments, which really just confuses the customers and really erodes at that trust and that lasting brand loyalty. So for me, those are the key do's and don'ts from my side.
Thank you very much, my esteemed panelist members, for really sharing such valuable insights. I think you've touched in issues related to the culture, in terms of data, yes, it's king, it might change, always keep an eye in terms of what's happening so that you don't leverage on what's happening, but you then find out that actually that thing is now being cancelled, based on what the customers are then feeling about it and so forth, And there was issue that was very fundamental in terms of do not cross the ethical line. No matter what you then do not cross the ethical line. I'm sure Gilani maybe was referring to, do not use data, people's data for personal reasons and so forth. But she had something in mind when she was so firm around that. And Nomusa, you've touched it very much well in terms of always understand your market. Do not shy away from doing research all the time. Understand your market, understand the need that is there. What is it that you're trying to solve? Don't try to then speculate in your own mind that this is the actual problem or pain points that people are then facing, and then you want to then solve it yourself, but do some research, understand the market, understand their demographics and so forth. And then, colleagues, I just want to then challenge you in this question then. You guys have some standout examples that you can share in terms of some of these behavioral, nudges that have been used effectively, maybe from your own personal experiences, from your own examples within your industries and so forth. Do you have a standout example that maybe one of you can share with us, or each of you can then share with us so that we can get that perspective in terms of, an example that can hit, that we can be able to relate with, as participants or as listeners.
I think I'll go for. Oh, sorry.
No problem. Go ahead.
My choice already on.
Okay. I think for me, I'll speak from the travel space, and I think it's something that's quite. It always has left a lasting, impact on me, and it's really around when you are in a team or your business, having the people who embody the values of your brand, and that talks to everyone who interacts with the customer, whether it be a passenger. And I know I talk a lot about passengers because I am in the travel space, but I think when the travel bug bit me or wanting to be in this space, I think I must have been quite young, traveling with my younger sister from a young age. And I can tell you today that the care of that cabin crew gave two really young, my sister was a toddler at the time, really young, nervous flyers, has been something that has created a lasting brand loyalty to that particular airline. And so hence I say that how the people in our teams, whether it be sales reps, whether it be the person who's manning the stores on the ground level, how they interact with your passengers, how they interact with your customer base, whether it be call center, really needs to embody the values of the business or whatever service that you're trying to deliver. If it's hospital care, if it's experience, whether it's a nail technician, it's how people make you feel in a world that is so reliant on AI and data-driven, and people being a little bit antisocial. Everyone wants to just hold their phone and hug their phone. But I think those human interactions, for me, is what really sets a lot of brands apart when creating those long-lasting experiences as well as brand loyalty. So I hope I've answered your question.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, Zandile, you wanted to go.
I think Nomusa has actually taken quite a bit of what I wanted to say, but I also wanted to give an example of nudges that you asked for in our industry, right? So something that I found so interesting, when we kind of entered the American market, right? You would assume that they would be a lot further ahead in terms of technology, right? And be using it in the way that they market and all of those kind of things, right? And we used the first mistake that we made, which I will attest to, is that we took something that was working really well in SA and thought that if we're going into the American market, as we kind of launch, we're going to use digital to speak to them, right? And what we quickly realized is that Americans want paper. They want you to come and drop off a printed flyer at their door, and that's how they're going to respond to you. So that's an example of nudges, right? And the way that we started seeing that was through social listening. So we started listening to what are other marketing firms doing in that area? What are they seeing as the nuanced things that are happening? And then we realized we actually need to go back to putting an ad in a newspaper. Whereas in South Africa, we've shifted from that so much that a lot of marketers are actually opting to put their adverts into digital magazines, digital newsletters, digital everything. But in America, it's completely different, completely. And they literally print newsletters every single week because that's why people want it, because they assume, right? And the behavioral thinking around it is that, so they have different newsletters that come out in their towns. And if it's coming from that local newsletter, then they trust it. So if you are just sending them something via LinkedIn or you're sending them an email, they don't trust you because essentially you're not in the inner circle, if I can call it that. So it's just one of those nuances from a nudge perspective where you need to listen to what's going on in the area that you're in.
Thank you very much, Nomusa and Zandile, for taking that questions. For taking that question. Apologies for that. I think maybe then I will just cover it up, summarize it. I think Nomusa touched really on issues related to, having people that will live the brand, have them to also live the brand that is there throughout the entire value chain of the company, whether it's from the person behind the phone who's doing hard sales, whether now it's from the person that's giving out the actual service, the front, worker, the frontline person, and the entire ecosystem value chain to live the brand, and then be able to then engage with people, know how to then engage with people. I think that Zandile has given some great example that I even didn't think about, and you're right in terms of saying this, that assumption, in terms of Americans will then be the first people in terms of being the first to world and so forth and country. And you'd think that they will be the one who will be then leveraging on technology more than us from the second, third, world countries. But you find out that actually they trust more in terms of the paper-based than the digital-based. I think thank you very much in terms of those insights. We should be careful in terms of how we then apply these nudges. Where are we at? Which geographical areas are we? And which demographic, factors also. We should be careful in terms of that. Thank you very much, colleagues, on that. And I will have my last question in relation to this discussion. Then we'll move on to the third discussion. My last question is in relation to what emerging tools or methods should marketers then explore in 2025? What are some of the tools or methods that marketers should then explore in 2025 when using such as these nudges and so forth, and gaining these behavioral insights and so forth. Apologies about that, colleagues. And I'm going to cover. Yeah, I'll put it on the floor for anybody.
Okay. So I'll try and answer it first. So in terms of the tools, in terms of applying those nudges, is that have the ability to be able to test those nudges, right? Whether you are doing A/B testing and whether you're doing it on a specific journey. So I'll give an example. In terms of digital journeys, there are tools like Adobe Target. There's tools like Martech as well that actually like help us in terms of trying to market better. Then there would be tools like within your campaign space, having the ability to be able to randomize your target audience into a test and control group or into a multivariate type of group. And then also being able to analyze the data and being able to actually check what are the conversions, what is the lift. Because at the end of the day, you need to be able to translate the value of what you're doing into business terms. So just being able to use those type of tools. And in terms of trying to understand attention, as I've said before, you could use tools like eye tracking in terms of trying to understand like a journey design or conducting research in journeys. There's tools like Maze, for example. So just trying to understand the user experience, looking at digital journeys.
Thank you very much, Ankelan, on that. Ms. Sandile?
Sure. I think a big one that I'm seeing in my space at the moment. So obviously being a B2B, it becomes more important to be thought leadership driven, right? People need to know you as an expert in the space that you're in. And in the past, we've always relied predominantly on SEO, search engine optimization. So using keywords to be found on certain things and all of that kind of stuff. But now, when you look at the behavior of people and the fact that we're in a zero-click era, if I can call it that, right? So what people are doing is they're searching for something and they're looking at the AI kind of summary of what they're thinking. They're not going into your website anymore. So it becomes more and more important for you to now start adapting a strategy called AEO, which is answer engine optimization, right? So you should be using tools like SEMrush that essentially what it does is it helps you to realize, okay, if you're writing a thought leadership piece, which parts of this thought leadership piece are people sitting on the longest, right? Which parts are they just skimming through? And if they're skimming through it, they're not finding value in that part of your thought leadership piece, which means that you should then be adapting it in real time. So what we do is we send out like a thought leadership piece. We have a few that come out every month. And then we use AEO to check, are we coming up in the Google AI summaries? Are we coming up on ChatGPT, Gemini, all of these kind of things as a preferred answer, right? And if we're not, we then start adapting the thought leadership piece that's already gone out to be able to answer those kind of questions. So it's those kind of tools that help you to be in front of people, right, in the culture that they use. Because unfortunately, if you rely on your website alone in this era, you're not going to win, because people are extremely lazy, if I can say that, and they want the answers as quickly as possible. So if they have to go into your website, then go to the insights page, then go and scroll through everything that you're going to lose them. So it's those kind of emerging tools that are coming up a lot that you should be using as a marketer.
Thank you very much, Sandile, on that. And thank you, colleagues, for being able to touch in terms of some of the tools that we can then be able to use, in terms of, some of these nudges and so forth, And thank you very much for that. I think then I will move on to our last discussion then for the day. I know time flies when we are having fun. And I know somehow, some of these questions might be repetitive, in nature, because we have managed to touch them some there and there. But now I want us to dive in terms of, ethics and trust, in influencing, customer decisions in terms of when they're buying, And the question that I want to put on the floor is in relation to what are some of the ethical lines that the marketers should not cross when they're trying to influence people to buy. When they want to influence people to then have the buying behavior to buy their product. What is the thing that you should never cross as a marketer? Anybody on the floor?
So maybe I'll go first. In my space, we deal with a lot of varying different brands. And so I think one of the biggest things is to have a lot of respect for the brand that you are representing. I think that for me is ensure that whilst the brand is housed in your ecosystem, that you pay homage to and respect that brand and what it brings with it. The other big thing I think for me is authenticity. I think in a world where there's a hell of a lot of replica products, the trust that we give to customers is quite important. And once that has been breached, it's very difficult to build that back. So product authenticity definitely top of mind, and having a respect for the brands that you represent through and through that live in your ecosystem. You need to ensure that they're well represented so that you're able to maintain and retain customers and their loyalty in that regard. So that would be really from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Larissa, from that perspective. Is there anybody on the floor? Thanks, Zandile.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's become more and more important, and I think anyone that has an iPhone has seen that every single time you download some kind of app or whatever, Apple is now asking people, do you consent for us to track your information? And it's so important, especially in this age when people are collecting so much data on their clients. It's important to not exploit that data that you're using, right? And understand that there's vulnerabilities that exist, So don't deceive people in that you're tracking them and now all of a sudden using things to coerce them into becoming a client where they don't have the full knowledge of what it is that you have, And it's always, and I think probably from a NetBank perspective, I know you guys have to do it quite a lot from a cookie perspective. Other brands that are even outside of banks should also be doing those kind of things because they are also using that data. And it's just about being transparent and not manipulating it, not using it for deception. And also just not having that unconsented surveillance on your clients. Not tracking them without their knowledge, making sure that they know. And also, I think it's also very important to, when somebody opts into the tracking, if you want to call it that, is that you have to, as a brand, show the value that you're bringing to them by having their information, right? No one wants the information just to be given, and then you're not using it in a way that benefits me as your potential client. And I think if the easiest example that I can use in retail, right, is that a lot of brands, the best example that I can use is probably Shein, is that they learn what kind of style you have. So that kind of data is actually helping you as a consumer, because then it goes through, it removes all the important information. The unimportant information, the shoes that you don't want, for example. So it's a two-way kind of reward for the brand as well as a reward for the consumer. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Zandile. Mkela, do you still want to share?
No, it's just summarizing the principles, as my colleagues have shared already, in terms of transparency. Clients need to understand why are they being nudged and how is their data being used. And then also what the nudges must align to the consumer's best interest, as my colleagues have already said, and not just business KPIs. Because if you're only just going to be pushing business KPIs without the client getting the benefit, then it borders on the lines of being unethical.
Thank you very much for that great summary. Thank you very much, colleagues, for sharing some of these great insights. I think Nomos are touched in terms of, very profoundly in terms of respecting the brand. Respect the brand, have that authenticity. Thank you very much, Ms. Nomos, on that. And Zandile touched in terms of, gaining that consent. And now we're getting that in terms of the apps. When you download, do you consent to this? Do not manipulate the data, gain that consent, And thank you very much, Ms. Samkelan, in terms of, summarizing it in terms of the clients need to be aware. How is the data going to be used? For what reasons? And what will be their benefit, in terms of the data being used? Thank you very much, colleagues, for that. And then I think I only have just 2 more questions for you, and then we'll then wrap it up and then check if we have, a Q&A in terms of the questions that are there, and we'll be able to then address them. Apologies for that. We'll just take a twist in terms of, I want to understand that our customers becoming more resistant to traditional, persuasive techniques, methods that we used to be made, traditional in terms of influencing them. Are customers now becoming resistant to that? Are they maybe more now to technology, or is it kind of the two-way street, where you have that, that approach, where there is technology and there's still the traditional being still relevant to them? I think I'll then open it to the floor for any esteemed member to then answer. Zandile, I see your mic unmuted already. You can go ahead.
Yeah. So I think, yes, definitely. And especially when it comes to digital natives, right? I think there's become a sense of banner blindness, if I can say that, or ad fatigue, right? Where people are very aware of the fact that they're being marketed to. And specifically when it comes to algorithms, when it first started, we didn't talk about it a lot, right? So people just thought, oh my word, like my phone, all of a sudden the thing that I was talking about yesterday just pops up, and they didn't fully understand what it is that marketers were doing. But I think now people are extremely aware of the fact that algorithms exist and they are working 24/7, right? But I think even outside of that, if I can speak to kind of the traditional persuasive tactics that we've had, right, is if you look at something like an influencer that was used to push to people on digital platforms, and we're using these algorithms to go and speak to people, they're not trusting that anymore, right? They're seeing it as an ad. And I think what's happened is that you'll see now, as of late, the influencers actually have to say on their post, this is an influencer or a sponsored post. And that's purely because of that resistance. Because people they want to feel that authenticity that happens. So they would rather speak to a micro influencer like I don't know, sis Mavis from the spa that you see every single day. And if she says, on TikTok, that this product is good, people are going to listen to her more than they will an influencer that has done their studio recording, they've been paid, all of that kind of things. And they just want that authenticity that comes through, right? Because clients, or consumers rather, are wanting you have to earn their trust more now. So you have to tell real stories that resonate with them. We have to have transparency, and we also have to have that peer recommendation. So they need to see somebody that relates to them, and then they trust it. So there's very much that shift from campaigns to people buying from their peers.
Thank you very much, Zandile, for sharing that perspective. I see that there is no perspective that...
Yeah, so maybe I think I don't want to labor. Zandile has put it very eloquently together. I definitely do think it's that authenticity in experience that a lot of people are looking for. I think even if you listen to the frequencies, even in just a video that pops up, people are always asking, is this an AI generated thing? So there's such a distortion between what's real and what is AI generated in the world. And people are constantly trying to create that discernment because people are really craving that human experience that really still validates who we are as a people. And I think with any brand, those some of those core fundamentals still hold true, and people are still really, I think, really craving those in today's very digitally infused world.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nomusa, for sharing that. I think maybe just in summary, in terms of that point, it's all about authenticity. People are still craving for that authenticity. People are still craving to have that engagement with the human, that also they trust, because of, data, how is that being used, and so forth, at least if they have that person, as Ms. Sadile has indicated, that they will know that they're always walking to the spa so that they can authenticate that, yes, this is real, this is what's happening. I guess maybe, those traditional, way of influencing, methods of influencing people to then purchase, they still play a very fundamental role, even in today's day and age of, big data and AI driven and so forth. I think then my last question then, then I will open the floor for the for questions to come through. Just colleagues, participants that are joining us online, you can be able to just type some of the questions that you have on the chat, and I will be able to go through them while we go through this last question. I think my last question is around, trends, what trends in regulation or customer expectations should marketers prepare for? What are some of the trends that, in terms of regulations or in terms of customer expectations that marketers should then be able to then prepare for, in the near future or currently even now? One on the floor.
So I think maybe I'll go first, and I'll make it short and sweet to allow enough question time. Sustainability, I think that is one of the biggest things. If your organization hasn't been impacted or has got preparation strategies in terms of how to be, I think, more globally astute to all of the patterns around global warming, climate change, how are we ethically harvesting some of the products? How are we giving back from a social point of view? So it's all of those integrated principles around sustainability that I think when you're building your brand, have a look at all of those items and all of those conversations and themes that are coming up, and ensure that your brand is sitting on the right side of that, so that you're not having to react as opposed to infusing that into your development strategies. Rather be on the forefront and understand that your whole value chain, from your suppliers, how goods are sourced and how your products are being sourced and how they're coming out, and what kind of social integration of products and socioeconomic projects are you building in and weaving into your brand, and how you put it out there into the space. So I think that would be for me as around sustainability.
Thank you very much, Mr. Very powerful. Zandile?
I think specifically when we talk about AI, right, and the uptake of using AI in marketing teams is on the rise, right, globally. So I think it becomes more and more important for marketers to have policies in place that speak to the use of that AI, right? And one of those things speaks to that emerging, the regulations around having AI transparency to their clients. So you're seeing a lot of brands coming out and saying upfront, this ad was done by AI, right? And it's really important for that to be happening. Just one, so that there's trust in the market, because a lot of people can actually see that you've used AI. So it's still around that building of trust, understanding that our values are still what we uphold. So we're not going to lie about what we've created and say that it's what we've done, but we've used AI to do it. And then I also think that accountability and transparency mandates, explaining that can help them in terms of demanding that and all of those kind of things, and being transparent in what your company is doing in that regard, right? And then just being more stricter, I guess, in the oversight of the emotional AI that you're doing. Because if you're using AI and you know that you're able, in order to not coerce them, but to educate them. I think that's the difference that we should be doing as marketers. It shouldn't be about manipulating people, but it should be about creating that value. So yeah, just being stricter about those kind of things, and being upfront.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sandile. Ms. Samkela.
Yeah, so I think just to make it very short and sweet, is that our role as marketers is not only to influence, but to influence in a way that it is ethical, it is empathetic, and it is in an intelligent way. So actually understanding your customer segment, how they behave, and actually how they relate to other individuals within the social context is very important. So those are the things that you need to plan for as a marketer. And as Nomusa has already spoken about, I mean, sustainability will never run away from that. Within our industry, it's about financial inclusion. And, how do we drive financial inclusion? And what does it actually mean? And how is that changing the world and the context in which we are in?
Thank you very much, Ms. Samkela. Very short, sweet, and powerful. I think, colleagues, let me just wrap up this particular question, then we'll wrap up the entire conversation. I think, thank you very much for sharing these great insights. I think Ms. Nomusa was indicating very much powerful in terms of sustainability. Whatever we do, we cannot run away from it, and, how do we then give back to the society? What is then the benefit in terms of the society? How do we give back? And then how do we make sure in terms of the entire value chain system keeps with that sustainability, in terms of how we source products and so forth. And Sandile touched in terms of the AI transparency, build a trust in terms of engaging customers, and this was created by AI. This is the data that we used and these reasons and so forth, have that AI transparency. And I think Ms. Amkela then touched in terms of understanding your customer segments, as well as also agreeing with Nomusa in terms of their sustainability, that it will still be there, no matter what. It's something that marketers should always prepare for. Thank you very much, colleagues. I think these were great insights. I've truly learned, and I hope my participants also have learned very much from these powerful engagements. We truly appreciate them, colleagues. We don't take them very lightly. I have not seen any questions on the Q&A side. It was just which I believe in terms of how far we are with the class. And then I will read some of I think there were 2 questions, but I think Amkela then try to answer Tendai in terms of the tools, and we did go through in terms of some of the tools. And then maybe Amkela, this will then be for you in terms of our banks wanting that level of creative engagement, that TikTok is a space that they want to play in. So I think our banks in terms of open, in terms of the creative engagements, TikTok space, how open it is. I don't know if Ms. Amkela, you then want to take this one, and then I will still open to the floor if anybody would want to share another perspective.
So definitely banks are open to this, and we see it that within the space of consumer financial education, I think that is where we're playing in terms of in having engaged in content on TikTok, because it is actually by regulation that all the financial services industry or banks actually need to run consumer financial education. So, and we know that financial literacy within the country is not as good as we had hoped. So they are open in terms of having those TikTok and engaging conversations, particularly focusing on consumer financial education.
Thank you very much, Ms. Samkilani. Very powerful response, and thank you so much. Do we have any other question then from the participants? I'm not seeing any hands being raised, and I'm also not seeing any further questions that has then been asked. I think then with that then being said, in absence of further comments or questions that have been posted in terms of the chat or hands that have been raised, I think I want to then allow an opportunity to our esteemed panel members in terms of sharing their final thoughts, their closing remarks. I think I'll just give 2 minutes to each to share their final thoughts, their final remarks, and then we'll then call it a day. Maybe there was one question that came through. Okay, numbers. Okay, is it directly from you, Zandile, in terms of send me your number? Okay. Okay, then there was, why would it be necessary to state that the radio ads was done by AI if previously the voice overs were done and the disclosure wasn't necessary? Do we then want to answer that, maybe Zandile? Do we then want to answer that question?
So Yuri, it's not necessarily about radio ads, right? Because radio ad is a voice. So even if you're using an AI voice, it's not important to kind of be transparent about that. Where transparency matters is when you're using like imagery and it's like a video and that kind of stuff. That's where it matters a lot more, right? Just because some of this AI doesn't look realistic, right? So you could be almost seen as painting a picture that's not real life, if you understand what I mean. So it helps. I'll use a bank, for example, or a car, rather, automotive industry. If you're using a video that shows the car performing in a specific way, right? And then somebody comes a month later and they're like, oh no, in your ad, the car was doing this and this and this. It's very important that you can show, no, we actually used AI for this thing, so we didn't record it. So we cannot be held to what it is that you saw on that ad. So that's why it becomes important to do those kind of things. It also becomes important when you're selling a product where, I mean, I'll use the easiest example, is like a weight loss product, for example. And then you use an AI tool to show the transition of the weight loss. It wasn't an actual person that lost the weight, but you're simulating what it would look like. So people can't come back and almost hold you to that regard. That's why it's important in different spaces.
No. Thank you very much, Zandile, for the perspective and very powerful response. And I hope our participants is then being answered on that. Is there any perspective colleagues that would want to then open to that question? Before then I allow you then to share your final thoughts. I think Zandile, then there's a request maybe to share your email. I'm not sure if then you are willing, you might be able to put it on the chat there. Thank you very much. Then colleagues, I think let me allow our esteemed panel members to then share, their key takeaways and their final thoughts. Just allow them 2 minutes each to share thoughts in relation to our conversation that we are having, just to summarize and wrap it up. Any?
Sure, I'll go. I think for me, the big one is really being human is still cool. So authentic experiences are definitely still a thing. And I don't think that we should shy away from them, regardless of the advances that we're making from a technological point of view. Experiences are still such a key driver towards staying power and brand recognition and brand authenticity and loyalty. I think if anything, to part, I mean, people should not shy away from being bold about our brand and being innovative and listening to the trends and especially the data to help shape, where our brands are going. And I think also lastly, I'd like to thank my esteemed colleagues for allowing me to share this incredible space and the school as well, Leander, yourselves, for inviting us here, and building a network. I think we also just created a new network for ourselves as your panelists. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ms. Melissa. We truly appreciate it. We truly also appreciate from your insights and learning from you as well, transferring the knowledge. We've learned so much more in terms of authenticity being so powerful, sustainability. Thank you very much, Melissa. It was a great pleasure to be with you here and sharing these great insights. Truly appreciate it. Ms. Sabine, I see you also have your mic up. I'll pick on you.
Yes. I think there's a sentiment that people have around AI and the fact that it's here to kind of take over our jobs and all of these exciting things that people are saying. But I think it's also important to know or to recognize rather that, to what Nomusa said, humans are still at the center of what we do. Humans are where we're drawing our information, where we're drawing our insights, what we're crafting everything that we do based on. But, things like AI and other emerging technologies are helping us do that faster, right? And the pace that we are in at this current point is that we have to be adapting literally every day, So if you're not using MarTech tools in your marketing, you're unfortunately not in the playing ground anymore, For you to be competitive, for you to be seen by the people that you need to be seen by, you need to be using multiple MarTech tools, not just one, multiple, and you should be stacking them, right? And I think what's also really important is, even though some of us on this call have shared certain tools that they should be using or anything like that, I would say don't just go out and take those tools and plug and play. It needs to answer the problem that you have, or what the answers that you're trying to find in the market, right? So it's important to firstly start with, what is the problem that you're solving? Does this MarTech tool solve that problem? And once you've started using that MarTech tool, it's important to test it, right? And understand that all of us as marketers, even the ones that have been in this space for years, we are all learning, because we've never had this kind of technology existing. So we're all constantly sitting and trying to figure out, okay, what is this AI thing doing today? And if you've looked at the fact that, we've moved from AI to now generative AI, it's important for us to be constantly learning and be constantly open to understanding what's going on and how it affects us, right? And I think as marketers, we need to move away from being rigid in what we've been doing, and understand that it's always about finding these new learnings and finding ways to incorporate them in what we do every day. And it's going to change. So don't shy away from it. Use it, embrace it. And you need to be testing within your teams. Literally everyone. I mean, I have a team. We've started a meeting on Monday mornings where the whole team comes in, and what the whole basis of that meeting is, the team members need to come in and show a new AI tool that they found. They present it to us, the pros and cons, and then we see whether it works in our strategy, right? So I would say to you, just stay open-minded, stay open to learning, stay open to adapting, and understand that, as marketers, I don't think we're specialists anymore. I think we're moving to generalists now, which is a really good thing, because it means that we are placed really well to be able to support the business objectives, right? And drive that revenue that needs to be driven. So understand the power that you have and use it. I wish you all the best, all the students that are on the call with the rest of your studies. Just enjoy it, right? Love this brand and marketing thing is such a beautiful space to be in. So I hope that you enjoy it. And to my colleagues, thank you so much for the time that we've had together. It's been great learning from you too. So thank you for that. And yeah, Luanda and the Regenesis team, thank you for always thinking about us and thinking that, you know, the things that we have in our heads are worthy of being heard. So thank you so much. And yeah, I really enjoyed this interaction.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zandile, and we truly appreciate you also sharing your insights. You know, it was a very great pleasure in terms of having you and transferring your knowledge. And it's very much, you know, I think exciting to also learn that you've learned also yourself. You know, we'll be taking you as an expert in terms of, you know, we want to learn from you. We want to, you know, feed from your cup, only to find out that you're also being able to then learn, you know, from this discussion that was here. Thank you very much for sharing in terms of, you know, we need to be able to embrace these AI tools. We need to be able to then use them, you know, we still need to understand in terms of what are the pain points that the people are facing, you know, and then test the tools based on the pain points that the people are then facing, you know, because it's not going anywhere. The AI will be there. It's just sharpening in terms of the speed, because of how things now are flowing, you know, in terms of the work that we are then doing. Thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you so much. And the last panelist member, Mr. Mkelani, will then hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'll be quick. I think that my last words is that in such a hyper digital world right now, I think we must not lose the value of actually understanding human behavior and understanding how this can be turned into actionable insights for whatever industry that you find yourself in the future. So for us within the financial services industry, this means like, you know, understanding the way that people make decisions, how they make decisions, and actually nudging them or helping them to make smarter money choices while also upholding their dignity, privacy, and managing trust. So, you know, from our side, embrace the technology, you know, and let it work for you, and always have a mindset of continuous learning and continuous improvement. Yeah, that is it from my side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mkelani. Very always short, sweet, and powerful. Thank you so much. And you've shared in terms of, you know, us understanding the human behaviors, you know, all these behaviors that are encompassed, you know. And thank you very much in terms of also emphasizing the point of using these AI tools, you know, to our best benefit, you know. And thank you so much for sharing. And we could hear that the banking is coming on in terms of, you know, money management, how we spend our money. It's funny how the backgrounds will always, you know, show up, you know, whenever we have conversations. We truly appreciate it. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you all to our panelist members. We truly appreciate having you. We truly appreciate in terms of engaging you, sharing your insights. We know it took time to also come in, head, you know, what is it that's going to be asked? Let me think about it. You know, how is it going to come about? Let me find time to also be able to do some little bit of research. You know, yes, you might be expecting these things, but we still need to go back to review and rethink, relearn, you know, some of these things, you know. And thank you so much. This was a very powerful conversation that we had today. Truly appreciate it. I think now it's up to our participants also to take this information and utilize what they've learned here today. And thank you so much. And thank you for also learning also from this discussion that we had. We truly appreciate you. We truly appreciate your time that you've taken out of zero budget without being paid for you to be able to be here with us and share some of these great insights, you know, because some of us as facilitators, we get paid to talk and share information. But you guys were willing to then share it, you know, out of the community engagement perspective, you know. Thank you so much, and we truly appreciate it. Until we meet you next time, then, colleagues, thank you. With the powers vested in me, we'll then adjourn this meeting. Thank you so much.
So much, Leander. Cheers, guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.